Hi everyone, welcome back to PCS 101. This is for our class for Thursday, the 23rd, where we are basically on the cusp of our first speech, which happens to be the autobiographical speech, 5 minutes, where you get to tell the class a little bit about yourself. You can see in the notes below that I've indicated that we will be having consultations and practice sessions over the next week. So please contact me before the 2nd of March, which is when your first speech is due, about how things are going with speech number one. And it's up to you to decide how much or how little contact you want to have with me. This could just be a very simple email telling me how things are going with speech number one, what you're planning on discussing. It could be that you might want to send me your speaking outline so that I can give you some feedback on it. It might be that you would prefer to meet with me on Zoom or have a telephone conversation about your speech. We could do that. And it could be that you might actually want to deliver your speech and have my commentary before you actually do it for the class itself. So there can be as much or as little contact as you like, but I do want each of you to reach out to me. You can begin with email, and then we can take it from there if you wanted another form of communication to continue dialogue about speech number one. And you've got the week in order to do that. And as you know, speech number one is going to be due on the 2nd, which is Thursday. And you've got until midnight, well, actually 11:59 p.m. to post that particular speech. And what I'm going to do is add a folder onto the top of our Moodle site. It'll be entitled Speech Number One. And that's where you can upload your speech. You can see that I've indicated in the notes below that your speech recording should be one take, so you don't want to edit and splice together a lot of different speeches. It's not expected to be perfect. What you want to try to do is to be as conversational as possible so that in a real world setting, if you're on Zoom or you have to do something electronically or in person, that you can do it in the moment. So you do want to send me your speaking outline as well to posting your speech. By the 2nd, I ask that you send me your speaking outline via PDF to my email, which is Ruiz, R-U-I-Z, at gcc.mass.edu. In the real world, I or no one else would look at your speaking outline, but in this kind of workshop situation, I wanted to take a quick peek and give you my opinion. I'll be evaluating it informally on a checkmark system where a plus is excellent or a check plus is very good, check is satisfactory. There's even a less than satisfactory and unsatisfactory, but most of the grades end up being someplace between a check plus and a check, and sometimes a plus. So the idea is that part of this class is you trying to figure out what makes the most sense for your speaking outline. As I've said in the Toastmasters video said as well, less is more. So that you want keywords and phrases. If you want an idea of what a speaking outline could look like, look at all of the notes below, all of the videos I've posted on our Moodle site. Those are literally my speaking outlines that I've posted. So those are my notes that I use for reference. And in terms of uploading the speech onto Moodle, you can see below in the bolded text that there are instructions from IT about putting your speech onto YouTube and then uploading that YouTube video onto the folder. That's probably the easiest way to go about doing it. So you can go through the directions, and certainly if you've got any questions, you can ask me or IT about that. And again, I'll repost this for our next Thursday when you actually have to post the speech. I'm not going to put the folder up for you to post that speech until next Thursday so that ultimately you've got the week to prepare for your speech and to contact me with the practice session. So what's left basically for today's class is for you to take our first quiz. As you know, it's open book, open notes, and it's based on a textbook information and also class videos. So that said, It's 20 questions, short answer mostly, but some multiple choices, some true false. And I hope the quiz is more than just an exercise to make sure that you've been keeping up with the videos and keeping up with the reading. But I also hope that these questions are questions that can help you in terms of formulating your first speech. And quite honestly, your following speeches. While everyone is focused on the autobiographical speech, obviously we can also begin to think in the back of our minds about speech number 2, which will be a 10-minute informative speech, which we'll talk more about after speech number 1 is posted. And then finally, we will have the persuasive speech, which is a 15-minute speech. But our focus happens to be on the first speech. You'll note that last class I gave you some sample student speeches to watch. They could perhaps inspire you for ways that you could go about your autobiographical speech. Out of the 3 speeches, you probably noticed that the second speech, the one in the middle, was the weakest. I did this deliberately. If you'll remember when we talked about the primary recency effect, we tend to remember best what we hear and see first and last. So I'm hopeful that it's the first speech and the last speech. Those were the 2 obviously stronger speeches that remain in your memory, because the second speech obviously was being read, which is something that you don't want to do. We want to have a conversation with the audience, or in this instance, the camera. And it was pretty clear from his stilted delivery and his stiffness that he was reading it off camera. Even the use of props, which I agree was a good thing, just the way he interacted with the props by just raising them up and down and not really having any kind of real interaction with them, should illustrate how it's not just the content of the speech that's important, but the delivery of the speech that's important. And in fact, if you were to look at our syllabus, what you will see is a speech template that I'm going to be using to evaluate your first speech. And after that, I don't even bother to use the template. I just basically take some notes. And you can see that this template is divided up, and this is in the syllabus and other documents folder. This template is divided up into first content and then delivery, which is what we've been talking about all semester long. And content includes things like an introduction. Are you greeting the audience? Do you have a transition statement into your thesis? Do you have developed points? Are your points connected to one another? And you can see that there's a rating scale there from poor to satisfactory, all the way up to excellent. So I'll be using that template to evaluate all of those elements in terms of content. So it's the introduction, it's the body, or also known as the discussion section, and then finally the conclusion, and then the delivery. And that's just as important. And thinking about things like eye contact and vocal inflections and body language and facial expressions. So all of those have to be evaluated as well. And filler words, so verbal mannerisms. Are you saying and ah too frequently? And everyone says and ah at some point. You just don't want to say them so frequently that you end up distracting the audience because they're focusing on the number of times you're saying or ah or something of that nature. So that template is something that you probably want to take a peek at, not just in terms of putting together your own speech, but also thinking about evaluating the speeches of others as well, both in and outside of class. That these are all of the elements that we want to consider. So I will leave you to your quiz at this point, which reviews many of the elements that are on that template. And we will continue on next class, where I will have a folder for you to upload speech number 1. I look forward to getting your quiz. Your quiz is in lieu of your discussion forum question. So that will be due on Saturday, the 25th by 6 p.m. And I look forward to hearing from you anytime between now and the actual date of the speech itself, about how things are going with speech number 1. Take care. Bye-bye.